Have you ever noticed that no matter how much you accomplish, there's always something the mind finds missing? That even on the days when nothing is truly wrong, when the bills are paid, when the people you love are safe, when the sun is coming through the window just right, there is still a quiet restlessness underneath it all, a low hum of not quite enough that follows you from room to room, from task to task, from year to year. You are not broken for feeling this way. You are not ungrateful or weak or failing at something others have figured out. You are simply living inside a mind that was built to scan for problems, a mind that evolved to protect you by always searching for what is missing, what is incomplete, what is not yet fixed. And for most of your life, that mind has done exactly what it was designed to do. It has kept you moving forward, kept you striving, kept you reaching, but at some point, without your permission, it turned the search inward. And instead of protecting you, it began quietly convincing you that happiness was always somewhere just ahead. After the promotion, after the relationship, after the weight loss, after the savings account finally reaches the number you decided would mean security. After, always after. This is the exhaustion no one talks about. Not the tiredness that comes from too little sleep, but the tiredness that comes from spending years chasing a feeling you are already capable of having. The heaviness of a life lived entirely in the future tense. The subtle grief of ordinary days that passed unnoticed because the mind was somewhere else, planning, comparing, bracing for what might go wrong next. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to pretend the difficulty is not real. It does not ask you to smile through pain or manufacture a positivity that costs more than it gives. It offers something far quieter and far more honest than that. It says that suffering does not come from your circumstances. It comes from the distance between where you are and where your mind insists you should be. And it says that distance can be shortened, not by changing your life dramatically, but by changing the way you meet it. If something in these words has already touched something quiet in you, consider staying close to this space. There is more here for you, and it will keep waiting, gently, whenever you are ready. The first thing to understand is that contentment is not complacency. This is the misunderstanding that keeps so many people in a permanent state of low-grade dissatisfaction. The belief that if they stop pushing, if they allow themselves to feel that what they have is enough, they will somehow lose their edge, their motivation, their drive to become better. But the Buddha was not teaching passivity. He was teaching clarity. Contentment, in the truest sense, is not the absence of desire. It is the absence of craving, the difference between wanting something and being unable to feel okay without it. And that difference is everything. When you begin each morning by noticing what is already sufficient, not what is perfect, not what impresses anyone, but what is genuinely here and supporting you, something in the nervous system settles before the day has even made a single demand. Your breath is here. Your body carried you through the night without being asked. Perhaps there is someone who thinks of you. Perhaps there is a window, and outside that window the light is doing something it has never done in exactly this way before. This is not small. This is the architecture of a life. The practice is simple enough to seem almost insultingly small. Before you reach for your phone, before the notifications and the news and the morning's first anxious thought, pause. Say quietly, for now, this is enough. Let your eyes open slowly. Notice the ordinary light in the room. The mind may resist immediately. It may say there is so much to fix, so much to improve, so much catching up to do. That is fine. Improvement can come later, presence can come now. And when you train the mind, even briefly, to search for sufficiency instead of scarcity, and you change the emotional ground you're standing on before the world has had a single chance to shake it. Over weeks and months, this small ritual reshapes your baseline. You begin to inhabit your actual life more fully instead of living in a constant negotiation with an imaginary, better version of it. And something unexpected happens. You feel lighter, Not because everything changed, but because your relationship to not enough finally began to soften. There's a kind of life that moves so fast it almost disappears. You know this life. You have lived it. You wake up and then somehow it is noon, and then somehow it is dark outside, and you cannot quite account for what happened in between. Only a blur of tasks completed and messages replied to and small fires put out. A long corridor of doing that led somewhere but nowhere you consciously chose. This is not a character flaw. It is what happens when awareness leaves the body and the day runs on autopilot. The mind moves ahead of the moment and the moment passes without a witness. Buddhist practice does not ask you to slow down your entire life. It asks for something far more manageable. One intentional pause, placed somewhere in the middle of your day, not at the beginning when you are still fresh, not at the end when you are already depleted, but right in the middle when life is already moving and the pause costs something. Choose a moment that is realistic for you. It might be while washing your hands or sitting in your car before you walk back inside, or the 60 seconds between finishing one piece of work and picking up the next. When that moment comes, stop. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice the temperature of the air. Feel the breath entering and leaving your chest. You're not trying to achieve calm. You're not trying to fix anything. You're simply reconnecting. This pause does two things that are worth understanding. First, it interrupts the accumulation. Most people carry stress from the morning into the afternoon and from the afternoon into the evening without ever releasing it. It just layers quietly until the body is carrying a week's worth of tension that was never acknowledged. And a single conscious pause breaks that cycle. Second, it reminds you of something the culture of constant productivity would prefer you forget. Your worth is not measured by how much you get done. You are allowed to stop. And you are allowed to breathe without it being in service of the next task. And when you practice this daily, something shifts in how you respond to difficulty. You begin to catch frustration sooner, to savor joy more fully, to listen more deeply, because you have trained yourself to be present in the middle of things, rather than always racing toward the end of them. The world you live in has spent decades teaching you, quietly and persistently, that happiness comes from acquiring. A better phone, a better apartment, a better title on your email signature, a better version of yourself, always just one upgrade away. And it is not entirely wrong. New things do bring a small lift, a brief feeling of progress. But that feeling fades faster than the credit card bill arrives, and the mind, unsatisfied, moves immediately to the next thing it needs. Buddhist wisdom is not against owning things. It simply observes that possessions were never designed to hold lasting joy, because everything material is temporary. It changes, it breaks, it becomes ordinary within weeks. When happiness is too tightly tied to what you own, it rises and falls with circumstance, and you are never more than one bad month away from despair. The shift being offered here is subtle but transformative. From acquiring to experiencing, not what can I get today, but what can I fully inhabit today. While drinking your morning coffee, instead of scrolling through something that agitates you, pause long enough to taste it. Notice the warmth spreading through your hands. Notice the way steam moves. And notice the particular quality of silence in the room before the day fully begins. This is not romanticizing. This is inhabiting. When you speak with someone, give them your actual attention, not the performance of attention while you prepare your next sentence, but the real thing. When you walk outside, notice the sky as a living presence above you, not as background scenery to pass through on the way to somewhere else. These are not grand gestures, they are small acts of reverence for the ordinary. And here is what makes them powerful. Experience cannot be compared the way possessions can. Your quiet cup of coffee cannot be ranked against someone else's. Your particular afternoon, noticed fully, belongs only to you. When happiness is rooted in experience rather than ownership, comparison loses much of its grip. You stop measuring your life against curated images of lives you will never actually live. And you begin to find almost against your expectations that what you already have is richer than you realized. Each day leaves a residue, a conversation that did not go the way you hoped, a decision you second-guessed, something you said that came out wrong, or something you should have said and did not. A small failure, an unresolved tension, a moment of shame that the mind has quietly replayed 17 times since it happened. Most people carry this residue without realizing it. They bring yesterday into today and last month into this morning, layering weight they never consciously chose to keep. And slowly, without noticing, the mind becomes a room that has not been aired out in years. The practice of letting go before the day ends is not about denial. It is not about pretending things did not happen or forcing a resolution before one is ready. It is about something simpler and more honest, placing a gentle boundary around the day before you sleep. Before you close your eyes, take a few quiet minutes to notice what felt heavy. Notice where you were reactive, where you disappointed yourself, where something landed harder than you expected. Then, instead of analyzing it endlessly, instead of building a case, assigning blame, rehearsing what you should have done, say something quietly and with intention. This happened. It cannot be changed. I choose not to carry it into tomorrow. Buddhist teaching identifies clinging as the mechanism that prolongs suffering. Events occur, emotions arise. That is unavoidable and human. But when we replay and resist and tighten our grip around what has already passed, we give the past more power over the present than it deserves. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop tightening. If you made a mistake today, acknowledge it with honesty and plan to make it right. If someone hurt you, feel it fully and then gently loosen the story. You are not your worst moment. You are not permanently fixed in a single reaction. Everything changes, including you. And when you practice this each evening, something shifts in how you wake. The mind is quieter, the chest is lighter. You meet the morning with less residue and more room. This is not dramatic transformation. It is simply the daily work of keeping your inner space habitable, one gentle release at a time. If this practice is resonating with you, if you find yourself returning to these ideas between sessions, consider subscribing to stay close to this kind of reflection. There is more ahead, and it will wait for you without judgment. There is a voice that follows you everywhere. It speaks in the morning when you look in the mirror. It speaks in the afternoon when you make a mistake that anyone would make. It speaks at night when the room is quiet and the day is still being processed. For many people, this voice is not kind. It criticizes with a precision that no outside person could match, because it knows exactly where the vulnerabilities are, exactly which words will land hardest, exactly how to make a momentary failure feel like a permanent verdict on your worth. And it does this so automatically, so constantly that most people have stopped noticing it is happening. They have simply absorbed its conclusions. The practice of compassionate self-talk is not about affirmations that feel hollow or a relentless positivity that exhausts you. It is about something quieter and more sustainable. Noticing the tone of your inner voice and softening it. Buddhist wisdom is direct about this. Compassion does not begin with others. It begins inward. The same understanding you would offer someone you genuinely love is the understanding you are being invited to offer yourself. Imagine someone close to you makes a mistake, forgets something important, stumbles in a conversation, falls short of their own expectations. Would you say to them, "You always mess things up, you never get it right, you should be further along by now"? Of course you would not. You would say it is okay. You are learning. You are doing your best with what you have. And yet, internally, most people use words toward themselves that they would never direct outward. Words that harden with repetition into beliefs. When you catch the harsh voice rising, you do not need to fight it. Simply notice it. Then soften it, one sentence at a time. Replace "I'm so bad at this" with this "is genuinely difficult, and I am still learning." Replace "I always fail" with this "did not go the way I hoped." and that is not the end of the story. It will feel strange at first. Kindness often feels unfamiliar when self-criticism has been the default for years. But unfamiliar does not mean untrue. And over time, as the inner voice becomes steadier and more honest, rather than harsh and absolute, the emotional climate of your entire life changes. Chums, you begin to take more risks because you know you will not punish yourself mercilessly when they do not work out. You recover more quickly from setbacks. You stop hiding from your own imperfections and start moving through them with more grace. Happiness does not grow in a harsh environment. It grows where there is safety, where mistakes are allowed, where the self is met with the same patience you would offer a person you deeply love. The way you speak to yourself is the emotional atmosphere you live in every single day. Make it kinder and you will begin to feel at home inside your own life in a way that no external achievement could ever provide. There is a form of happiness that is personal and bright and often short-lived, the happiness of getting what you wanted, of being seen, of succeeding at something you cared about. And then there is another form, steadier and quieter, that does not spike and crash, that does not depend on applause or recognition or things going your way. This second form of happiness grows in a direction that modern life rarely encourages, outward. One small, sincere act of kindness each day, not for recognition, not to build a personal brand of generosity, not even to feel good about yourself, but simply because it is possible and because the person in front of you is carrying something you cannot see. Hold the door, send a message to someone you have been meaning to reach. Listen to someone without preparing your response while they are still talking. Leave a space a little better than you found it. Smile at a stranger without needing anything back. These gestures are so small, they feel almost irrelevant against the scale of the world's difficulty. But internally, something significant happens when you make them. The mind, when turned entirely inward on its own problems, has a way of magnifying them. The same difficulty that feels unbearable in isolation becomes manageable when you step outside yourself, even briefly. And there is a warmth that follows genuine helpfulness, a quiet satisfaction in the chest that does not require anyone to notice. Buddhist teaching speaks of this as the natural consequence of acting from compassion rather than ego. The heart becomes lighter, not because the world got easier, but because you stopped asking the world to fill something only connection can fill. Over time, this practice reshapes the questions you ask about your own life. You move from what am I getting from this to what am I contributing here. That shift is not subtle. It changes how you enter a room, how you listen in a conversation, how you leave people feeling after they have spent time with you. And gradually the sense of isolation that so many people carry, the feeling of moving through life as a separate, struggling self, begins to soften. You remember that you are woven into something larger, that your presence matters in ways you will never fully see. That meaning does not require monuments or recognition. It requires only that you touched your small corner of the world with awareness, with patience, with the kind of quiet kindness that leaves people feeling slightly less alone. These are not rules to master. They are not a curriculum to complete or a standard to live up to, or a checklist that will finally prove you have done enough. They are invitations. Small, gentle, unheroic invitations to meet your life differently. Not later, when everything is resolved and the conditions are finally right, but now, in this ordinary day, with this ordinary breath, in this body that has been carrying you faithfully through every experience you have ever had. You do not need to begin with all six. You do not need to be consistent or perfect or impressive in your practice. You only need to begin somewhere. One morning of noticing what is already enough, one pause in the middle of a rushed afternoon, one moment of softening the voice that has been too hard for too long. Happiness is not waiting at the end of something. It is shaped quietly and daily through the quality of attention you bring to what is already here. May your days grow steadier. May your inner voice grow kinder. May you find in the most ordinary moments something you did not expect. Enough. If these reflections have brought you even a small measure of clarity or peace, consider subscribing to stay close to this work. More is waiting here, offered gently whenever you need it.